All right. Welcome to this iteration of Kubernetes SIG Cloud Provider meeting, Wednesday, April 24th, 2024. There's a lot of 24s. We are governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, so be kind. And let's take a look at our agenda for today. Thank you for getting that started, Elmiko. Let's see, I pulled up the triage. Clicking is hard. Go ahead and put yourself in the attending if you'd like. And I pulled up the triage because it looked like we had a couple that were sort of interesting. Let's see, we have a hostname override flag on kubelet no longer used for addresses as of Kubernetes 1.29. What do folks think? Is this, and this is happening on IBM Cloud. They're not sure if it's just IBM or other, probably not just IBM. Let's see if anyone, looks like Antonio flagged this for SIG Network and SIG Cloud Provider. And it looks like we had an unintended side effect. Oops. All right. Do we think there's anything we are going to get involved in here? Are we going to talk to Dan about it, or are we going to assume that it's taken care of in SIG Network? What are we thinking?
Was it actually a problem with the cloud provider, or was it just a networking problem that they're seeing that happened after they switched the cloud provider to external?
Yeah, it looks like maybe it's failing to have the cloud provider assign the address.
Who did Antonio assign it to? I'm just curious.
Dan Winship.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So one of your peeps.
Yeah,
So
totally. I mean, I could certainly poke Dan about this
yeah,
internally and ask him.
just double check and see if it needs to be triage, because if it's not triage accepted by somebody yet, like are they
Yeah.
still hoping that we I can even ping on here and just be like, hey sir, are you looking for anything from SIG Cloud Provider?
Yeah, maybe that's the most transparent way to do this.
Yeah, especially if we need to help. I mean, it sounds like maybe we make the cloud provider external the default everywhere, and that changed the behavior. So
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah. And that was as of 1.29, right? So
yeah,
Yes.
I mean, yeah, like I think the most we could have been involved is like if that change uncovered this.
Right, that's the question. Is it actually something in the cloud provider, or is it just, yeah,
No.
we shook the tree pretty hard and a lot of like squirrels fell out. So,
Yeah. All right, let's just see what Dan says. Okay, cool. Here's one. It's always interesting when people are like SIG node and SIG cloud provider. Okay. If we have a cloud provider ID for the node's host, I don't know that SIG cloud provider can help in this case because this is like a node behavior, right?
yeah, well, I mean,
Oh,
what
but
do
the
they,
problem is getting the provider ID.
right? Like, what are they asking for? Like, are they asking for us to mandate that CCMs have to fill in the provider ID or something?
Yeah.
Or are they asking to add a new field to the API? Like, I'm not familiar if is that field already there?
Yeah. I feel like we should just let this one play out a bit over there and see, because until you know, Antonio and Wojcik, Wojcik,
Maybe
voice check.
Wojtek? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, voice
take a
check.
look at that. Okay, great. Yeah,
Yeah,
until
because
they take a look at that. I don't
this
know.
is beyond just using a label for a selector.
Mm-hmm.
They want like new behavior there out of, the machine.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Okay. Original issue was closed for no reason. So say we all. Probably bots. Okay. So we're scheduling kinds of pods that prevent scale down. Oh boy. See if anyone from GCP has already looked at this, and it looks like interesting. Yeah. So if this is specific to the provider, does anyone know off the top
Right.
of their heads?
I think the observed behavior from this report that we're trying to figure out is that it appears in whatever installation they're using on GKE, there's some maybe CCM related pod that is causing a node not to be able to be removed, maybe because of the
Oh,
topology constraints or PDB or something. I don't know. And so, yeah, we're trying to figure out, are you reporting a problem with the actual cloud provider, or is this a GKE problem you're reporting?
yeah.
In which case you probably need to take it to the GKE support website and go through that, as opposed to,
Yeah.
because like there's nothing we can do to fix this from the cloud provider perspective if it's something about the way GKE deploys clusters, or it might even be a configuration parameter that this user
Mhm.
has specified in their GKE cluster. That's where we need someone with more expert, kind of knowledge about how
Yeah.
GKE deploys these things. And who knows,
Well,
they might have had an option to change it and they did something, you never know what's going on with these kind of cases.
yeah, I mean, well, also this should be, this, I think this would be handled by auto scaling. Ben the Elder's, I think, response is, right, he's GKE and it seems
Yeah.
appropriate.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I would go with, this is believed to be a GKE, not a
Okay.
GCP cloud provider problem.
Okay.
Yep.
I will write to.
Which is essentially what Almico said 2 weeks ago.
I was waiting for someone else to put a response here before like doing anything like closing it, because it seemed like maybe the person who opened this hadn't seen these reasonings before. So I wanted to make sure we got an act from them before, because they reopened the issue because the other one got closed, I think with the same kind of guidance.
My guess is that, they're using GKE, but not paying for GKE support.
Well, I mean, I assume GKE has some sort of.
There is, but I mean, there is a support. You can just get a GKE cluster. You can pay for a GKE support license, which will fast track this sort of thing. And I think they're
Okay.
trying to get it fast tracked by going to open source.
Sure, sure. So should I term this differently? Like open
Yep.
a request in the GKE forums? Like I don't know how to open these tickets, so I'm not sure what it's actually called.
Give me a sec. Let me grab that ticket number, and I will see about doing it. Okay, I got
Oh,
it.
okay. Do you want to reply to this, or
I think
would it
having
be
you do
better
it is
to?
good, and then I'll
Yeah,
respond
like
as well. And
yeah,
the more voices that say the same thing, the more I think the message carries.
yeah. Uh,
I don't think they're going to redirect anyone back here, honestly.
I don't think so, but I'm kind of trying to like be kind and be like, we think you should go over there. They'll send you back here if they really don't think they can help you, but that's probably not going to happen. Do you feel like that would lead to too much false hope?
Well, I think it might make. I mean, it's sort of.
It's
I'm
too
reading that as,
confusing.
yeah, exactly. Also, I think if we're going to go, if any SIG we're going to help this, I think you'd be better off with something like SIG auto scaling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even still, it's just going to come back to like whoever is the maintainer for the GKE provider
Yeah.
for autoscaler probably having to, you know.
Right, but I mean, this at least is a problem. I mean, the question of when to shut down a node is an auto scaling thing rather than a closed a cloud provider thing.
Right. Yeah. Did I miss that though? Did they mention the autoscaler in the?
No, but they're talking about wanting the nodes to go away.
They're trying to
as a
scale
scale
down.
and scale down is part of auto scaling.
Oh, I see. Yeah. In GKE, when you're using a scale down, you're saying the autoscaler is the one doing all this. Okay. I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Well, and there's a SIG for it, right? There is a specific
Yeah.
SIG
No,
auto
totally. Yeah.
scaling. So I think
Yeah.
the other thing is, if I were going to go with Bridget's thing, I would say if GKE support doesn't help, you may want to try talking to SIG auto scaling.
Yeah. I think mentioning SIG autoscaling here, like tagging them here, is probably a good idea.
Is it area or SIG? Like, how do I tag them?
Yeah. I think one of the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Walter.
No, go ahead. I'll make up.
No, I would. Yeah, I think the area commands are what we would use to get it into their triage queue, basically.
Wait. Okay. Am I doing this correctly?
I think so, but I'm terrible with these commands and always get them wrong. So I'm probably the worst person to ask.
Oh, it just says /SIG.
That's the one I'm used to,
Yeah.
/SIG space auto scaling. But
Does auto scaling have a dash or?
No, it's all one word.
yeah.
Okay. Like that?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I hope.
Okay. Hey, look at that. Fantastic. Computing success. Okay. And going back to failing tests. Oh no. Started failing at the beginning of the test grid. Possibly the beginning of time. All right. Do we know why we have an E2E test? This is various providers. I don't want to spend infinity time on this, but does anyone else know anything about this right away?
Well, I was going to say the fact that we've got two cloud providers here seems. I mean, we've got both AWS and GCE here.
What do we think? Do you know?
I mean, the test seems to be storage. So who is this currently set to go to?
It looks like we are going to everybody to see who wants to triage it, apparently.
Yeah, I think SIG storage is the right people. Beyond that, yeah.
Should we remove SIG Cloud Provider?
I think that's probably the best thing to do is just be like, yeah, we don't think this is us. I would actually leave it to them to say that. I would just say, we don't think this is cloud provider.
Good point.
I mean, I do think it's storage, but.
Did I do that correctly? I just want to see. Oh, remove -SIG. Okay. Does Cloud Provider have a dash in it?
It might, yeah.
I think
I feel
it does, yeah.
Let's find out. Hey, look at that. All right. I think we are done triaging. And we had a couple of other things. I did look at this test grid review and I was like, I don't know why that's on the list. So unless we have something specific to talk about for it, we don't need to. I just clicked on it. So I was
At
like,
some
oh,
level, I think the test grid is a little aspirational at this point. Like we brought it in because there were some tests that started to flake and people were like, hey, we should probably take a look at this. But
okay.
I don't think anyone currently on the call is like actively updating the GCP periodics. And that's something that we probably need to think about as a community. Like we have tests in the public, infrastructure testing stuff, and we probably should figure out like our, there are several interesting discussions happening about removing the cloud provider specific bits from the tests. And I think Patrick Ole has some really cool suggestions on, using the interface that's defined in there to make those tests, more generic. But like this is like a big thing we need to follow up on. Yeah. And this is what I was trying to do at the beginning of last year. But I think testing is something that like once migration extraction is finished, or as we're closing in on the stable release, I think one of the next, in my opinion, one of the next big tasks for this SIG is to improve the state of testing, for all cloud providers now that we've made this migration.
I concur. Walter?
So I concur as well. But the other thing I would suggest is that I think we need to have a mechanism by which the cloud providers can pick up builds of intermediary state Kubernetes at some frequency and validate with their tests that the changes that are going on the mainline don't break the cloud providers, and then report those results back.
I'm interested in how you define a mechanism. And I ask that because, I work at a cloud, obviously, and we do tests of pre-release Kubernetes. And so I'm just curious, like.
Sure. So the normal thing that I see is that
Okay.
the cloud providers get close to the I'm ready to release, and they go, let me go grab a recent version of the Kubernetes mainline and incorporate it, and then see what has broken over the last 3 months.
Ah.
And this is the normal pattern I see. I'm not saying it has to work that way. And then if something has broken, they come to and try and work out what's broken and come back, and you have a whole problem of trying to work out when and where things got broken, and then they inform the open source community. What I'm suggesting is something where we can, I think a lot of the cloud providers are actually using repos that we own. Like, and by we, I mean we, SIG Cloud Provider, own the repo. So like Cloud Provider GCP is a SIG Cloud Provider owned repo.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought is, if we own that repo, at one value that we can provide to both the cloud provider and to the open source community is saying, we'll take the bits, we'll twiddle some bit in their build system, we'll crank a build of AWS, GCP, Azure, and we'll run the tests against that resulting image. And then we'll report the results back to KK at some schedule so that we can understand whether or not the ongoing series of changes that are going on in KK have broken a particular cloud provider.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Early notification of breakage.
Yeah.
And just for clarification though, Walter, like we're talking about a distinction between end-to-end testing versus code that's in master of Kubernetes, and integration testing versus like a released artifact from Kubernetes, right?
So we should think about how we want to do it. I mean, the thing I'm envisioning, but I'm not saying I'm necessarily right, is to doing something like taking the release. Well, let me say the pre-released artifacts, right? So every night we generate actual images of the API server, the kubelet, etc. And so my thought is, if we could take those images, we take some packaging mechanism that includes the CCM for the relevant cloud provider, we package those as in a whole and we deploy them, especially if there was a standardized deployment mechanism like COPS. And then we deploy that and then we run the tests against it. And so if we
Yeah,
had
totally.
sort of the latest of all the KK images plus the last known good CCM packaged
Right.
together, deploy, run tests.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes total sense to me. I just wanted to call out the distinction between that style of testing versus like I've got tests in my cloud provider and I link against KK to run like the kube test stuff. I think they're like what you're talking about is more like, yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road. Like you would receive a Kubernetes release image with the CCM in it, and does it all work the way we expect it to when it's deployed?
Absolutely. And then the one caveat I will throw in that makes this all more difficult is that we release both binaries and libraries. And so what I'm talking about covers binaries. But I think the other thing we need to consider is what happened. The big one, let's say, is client Go. So if we make a change, if we, the open source community, make a change to client Go, does that break the CCM? Right. And so
Right.
the one caveat might be maybe we don't even use last known good CCM. Maybe we use a code point in last known good CCM and compile it against the latest KK libraries. But that's obviously quite a bit more complicated.
Right. And I would hope at some level that the E to E style testing is where we catch much more of that stuff, because that's the kind of testing that would be happening as you're getting the commits ready, I've just updated controller runtime and bam, I break the E to E tests or something. Hopefully you would know way before we even get to like a release artifact.
Yeah.
This is compelling stuff. This is stuff of legend, and also makes me wonder, are we tripping over this frequently enough that we can say this is a very important next project?
So the interesting thing is, I don't know to what degree today. So one of the things I will say is we have, as a community, relied heavily on GCP testing.
Mm-hmm.
And the GCP tests all still run in KK. But the changes we're making are going to turn those tests off. And so I think it's sort of a how much do we lose, and it's not necessarily clear how much we lose when we turn off all of those tests. But there are tests today that are very difficult to run without a cloud provider.
Yeah, yeah. And this is related, of course, to the like out of tree migration, is like losing that centralized testing.
Exactly.
Michael,
what are you adding for us?
I'm just adding a link to the document I put together last year about like improving the state of testing, because we had some good discussions there, and I think like I was getting acceptance from like SIG testing around that style. It doesn't necessarily address the second thing that Walter's talking about here, which I think is like I think that's huge, like to get like an integration style test like that. But it addresses kind of the prior question that I was talking about, which is more like EDE testing and getting the cloud providers to take care, Walter, getting the cloud providers kind of more involved on that front.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, very important. Great. So it sounds like that's kind of a exciting place to plug in for anyone who's looking for something to make their mark on.
Yeah. And I agree with what you said though, that I think like testing, like just this whole story is like that it should be the next big thing for this SIG.
Great. Awesome. And I'm just gonna write that you said this so that if people have questions, they know who to talk to. Okay. And then anything more on this topic of tests, the new thing, before we look at the annual report, the old thing? Okay. So we have this. Thank you for preparing this, Elmiko. And we encourage everybody to go in there and put some suggestions, put some comments, etc. And I put a few comments in. We can take a look real quick and see if anyone has anything else that jumps to mind immediately. And yeah, we have a little bit of cleanup to do around the emeritus moves, etc. I will take a look at that. Do you want to, I'm sharing it, but do you want to, since you wrote this, do you want to kind of walk us through the high level of what you're
Yeah,
putting in the
sure.
report?
So the
Mhm.
first part, the updates to the README, I tried to isolate that just to Nick, because from what I can
Yeah.
tell, our SIG YAML is already updated to have Nick moved off there. But I left Andrew in because one, the timing is it's happening in 2024. And two, like you noted, we still have that other PR open and we're getting
Yeah.
pushback because there's like extra process that needs to happen in order for that
Yeah.
to go forward. So yeah, I tried to like not go too far here. And
Yeah.
then I also removed the meeting from the
Yeah.
extraction migration part of the README since we don't hold that anymore. So the
What
next part,
question?
yeah,
Did you also go remove it from the shared calendar?
no, I didn't. I'll make a note to go check that.
I'll put it on here as well.
We did remove the Google Calendar item, but yeah, we should probably make sure if it's on another calendar in the community stuff, we should remove it.
I mean, it might be. I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like I sometimes get extraction migration calendar reminders.
We just need to double check to make sure.
Cool. Okay.
So yeah, then like they had generated like an annual report
Mhm.
template for us. So I went through and
Mhm.
just tried to call out like
Mhm.
stuff that I could remember. So Bridget and I being elected as the SIG chairs, I thought that was worthy enough just to note right at the top
That
there with
was
a
in
link to the
2023.
it did, yeah. Can you believe?
2023 feels like 800 years ago.
I know that's what I thought too. I was like, was it really 20? But like surprisingly, it was April 2023. So it's only been like
Horrifying.
just over a year. I know. I don't e,
I
well,
feel
I
like
don't
the old
even know.
lady in Titanic. It's been 87 years.
Yeah, whatever. Like, yeah, time moves quick in Kubernetes. Anyways. Yeah, so that was the first one there. And yeah, like happy
Yeah.
to I just mentioned kind of the
Yeah.
migration. I didn't really change the
Yeah.
Andrew stuff.
Yeah.
Um, then removing moving the 2395 to beta, that was a huge part.
Yeah.
So I
That
just
was
tried to put a
huge.
little flavor
Cool.
text there. Yeah, and to your point
And
here, Bridget, like I'm happy to grab the thank yous from the talk that that you gave. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like, so, and this is kind of the how much flavor do we want in there? I always think it's kind of nice if people did some great work and you had their names on a slide, why not throw it in the annual report?
Yeah,
At the very
absolutely.
least, it's something, and that kind of goes to the, you know, people were on stage and gave a talk, cool, throw their name in the annual report. Because if people are justifying their work, it's easy for them to justify by pointing to, hey,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. It was more
look,
like,
mom, my name in lights.
yeah, it was more hesitancy on my part because like there were a lot of people who helped out and I just wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
didn't forget anybody. But yeah, like just copying it
I
from
mean,
the slide
thank you
deck.
to all who helped, including,
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
So then the webhook cap also went into alpha state last year, and I think we might have just forgotten to update the records there, but I figured
Mm,
it would be nice to grab a little flavor text here from the cap, just so people
mhm.
know what that is and what it's going to be doing. I'm not like super happy with the first sentence, but like, I think for an amuse bouche, it's probably okay.
Mhm.
Let's see. And then yeah,
Yeah,
mention
I think it's fine because part of the, I think one of the valuable things about just throwing a little bit of this context in there is for anyone who is reading annual reports to find out which SIG they want to get involved in or whatever, they might say, oh, that's interesting.
right. That was my thought. I wanted there to be just enough detail so that someone could kind of get an idea of what the webhooks are for without being super nebulous about it. So I grabbed that kind of user story from the cap and just
Yeah,
put it in there because I figured, well, this pretty clearly illustrates what people would do with it.
yeah, cool.
And then yeah, like a quick mention
Mhm.
about ending the separate meetings for the extraction migration.
Mhm.
Not that we had a huge participation from the community, but this is something we did last year.
Yeah.
Uh,
Makes
So
sense.
those were kind of the big things. And then
Mhm.
this is something that I went through all the cloud providers that we own to make sure they're all up to date and everything.
Yeah.
The Baidu cloud provider was the only one that I had questions about because it's very clearly has not been updated since
Mhm.
2021. And I think that as a SIG, we should
Yeah.
reevaluate whether this is included in the Kubernetes SIGs organization, because it's
Yeah.
clear that without maintenance, like it's definitely falling behind. So that, but
Yeah.
all the other ones had recent commits and it looked like all the
Yeah.
owners were fresh and everything.
Thank you for doing that, because I've done that slog before. That's a thankless. So I'm thanking you now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
um, and that's I think that's one that's valuable to call out for people who are thinking, somebody's watching this recording later and thinking, well, why does anyone care if something's just sitting there stale? Well, in the world of supply chain security and everything else, something that's sitting there in a Kubernetes SIGs organization might look like it's got some trust, and we should probably make sure it's not actually a terrible, terrible trap of
Right.
so many years old of CVEs.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, without casting any aspersions or anything, like, yeah, given what we've all recently seen in the news with like, the XZ backdoor exploit that happened and everything, like I think it's good for us to be responsible and say, all right, we would like to include Baidu Cloud as a in SIG Cloud Provider, but it looks like
yeah,
this code is getting out of date. And so without anyone to maintain it, I think the responsible thing for us to do is to say, okay,
yeah,
we're going to de-promote this from the
yeah.
Kubernetes like SIGs organization.
Well, and I think I'm just going to put an action item, try to reach out to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why this is really a signaling to say, hey, like,
Yeah.
we've noticed this now and we're probably going to start the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the other thing is like, it's certainly possible that they're not using that repo and they're doing
Right.
amazing stuff over in some other internal repo. And it's like, okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Then
Yeah.
yeah,
They
let's
may
get
have
this
an
cleaned
interest
up.
in updating it, and yeah, they might have just forgotten about it or something. So anyways, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
Um,
Good call. Good call.
Next section,
Okay.
these are the talks. I pulled the two from KubeCon
Mhm.
NA and KubeCon EU, but I think,
Mhm.
Bridget, thank you for
Oh,
keeping me
yeah.
honest here. The KubeCon Shanghai is also probably a big one. So I will
Yeah.
absolutely add that, later on today, and
Okay.
do the similar
Awesome.
treatment. We'll put and I'll make it clear that the talk is in Chinese language,
Yeah.
just so people know, when they
Yeah.
come
And the
to it.
slides are in English. So
Yeah.
people can like browse the slides
Yeah,
if they
totally. I'll
don't
make
read
it
Chinese
clear.
or if they don't know Chinese. So
I think it's also awesome to have it linked here though, because then for our peers and colleagues in other parts of the world, like that, it's great to see a talk in a non-English language, for people
mhm,
who might be coming to this project from other places. So I'm super
mhm.
happy to include Peng Fei's talk.
Yeah, awesome, fantastic. And then um, I'm just going to put a note on there for these talks. I would say list the speaker names. I don't think you need to get into affiliations or anything, but
Okay.
I think it's just kind of nice for people to see. Or
Yeah.
just you could do an affiliation, just like literally put exactly what they had on the
Yeah. I'll just
KubeCon
copy the
program.
slides. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then let's see.
Yep. And then it was just, yeah, I
Yeah.
went through the checklist and checked everything. And I think with the README updates that I've included here, the README should be accurate for the 2023, reporting time frame. And I went through the other documents and looked at everything to make sure everything was all set up. And yeah, it's all pretty much straight for most of it.
Right. Awesome. Well, does anyone else on the call have any questions about this?
Or if anybody gave talks at like a KCD or anything like that would like to have them included here, please like reach out to me. I'd be happy to include any of that kind of material. If you gave a talk about cloud providers and maybe it wasn't at a KubeCon, like I said, maybe it was at a
Yeah.
KCD or even a local users group, if you've got a link
Yeah.
to a recording or something, definitely pass it on. We'll make sure to get it in here. But you've only got about another week before we need to have this thing merged. So
Awesome. And I'm going to say talks, blog posts,
yeah,
anything.
absolutely.
Anything that you feel like you worked on that was cloud provider-ish that you want to share in the report. All right. Do we have anything else that we should talk about here?
I would just say, like, anybody from the community who's here or watching on a recording, maybe, you know, if you see the SIG annual report and you want to put a +1 there or something, happy for any comments, or if you have suggestions or you find many spelling mistakes or whatever, like, it's all good.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you all. And with that, we'll see you all next time.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bridget. Later, everybody.